The retirement of Ruth Rouse as Grenada's top civil servant last week has caused us to take stock of the role of career government employees and their path to ascendancy in the public service. The sensitive and prominent role of the cabinet secretary has historically been mired in murkiness and palace intrigue, especially with the last administration. Now, former Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell removed then Cabinet Secretary Gemma Bain Thomas from the role within days of winning the 2013 general election. Bain Thomas subsequently sued the previous government for wrongful dismissal, and now the Grenadian taxpayer is forced to fork up close to 1 million EC dollars to compensate Thomas for an ill-conceived and ill-advised decision by an elder statesman whose tally of bad decisions resulted in hundreds of millions of dollars in court judgments against the state. However, Grenada's stellar cabinet secretaries have found themselves between a rock and a hard place. They are sometimes perceived as politically close to the sitting prime minister and his team. The late Nadeka McIntyre and former cabinet secretary Beryl Isaac were accused of being Keith Mitchell lackeys who lacked the courage to respect the rules that govern the separation of the politician from the policymaker. Beryl's famous "the fiscal space would not allow" refrain would go down in infamy as one of the most contentious moments between a senior public servant and a trade union workers' union in modern Grenadian history. Now, this brings us to the case of Carver Let, who some are saying may be shortlisted to serve as the government's next cabinet secretary. If Let is appointed to this prominent role, it would undoubtedly raise questions concerning her meteoric rise, that is, through the public service ranks. Unlike previous cabinet secretary, Let only served as permanent secretary in one ministry following the June 2022 general election. And while Let spent most of her career in the Customs and Excise Division in Grenada, some may wonder why other permanent secretaries with much more administrative experience than Let were looked over. Again, the caveat here is we do not know whether or not Miss Let would in fact be appointed. What was the backstory, however, of her removal from the Customs and Excise Department? And what role did former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance Ophelia Wells Cornwall play in her removal? And then some have questioned whether or not a company associated with Let acted as an alleged service provider of decorative services to the NDC in the last campaign. Public service rules under SRNO 27 number 56 state, quote, that an officer shall not, without prior approval of the commission, engage in any private work for remuneration, unquote. But while Let may come under scrutiny in the coming weeks, the former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Ophelia Wells Cornwall, has also come under scrutiny by former AG Cajetan Hood, who threatened a few years ago to file a complaint with Grenada's Integrity Commission, questioning the nature of her relationship with the elder Mitchell in breach of Part 3, Section 1 of the Integrity in Public Life Act, which says, quote, a conflict of interest arises from a situation in which a person in public life has a private interest, which is such as to influence or appear to influence the impartial or objective performance of his or her official duties, unquote. It is our hope here at the Bubb Report, however, that the next cabinet secretary would act more as the head of the public service, as a fierce guardian of the rules and codes of public life, and less as a political advisor to the country's head of government.